The crystalline ships of the Meridian fleet emerged from hyperspace like fractals of starlight, their translucent hulls casting prismatic rainbows across Earth's atmosphere. Inside the command vessel, Admiral Verthak observed the blue planet with 4 of his sensory stalks, while the other 2 remained focused on the tactical displays. Curious, he noted, his voice resonating through the crystalline chamber. Their orbital defense grid appears non-existent. First Observer Kellerman adjusted her sensor arrays, the crystalline implants in her cerebral crest glowing with increased power. Confirmed, Admiral. We detect numerous satellites, but they appear to be primarily for communication and navigation. No weapon platforms, no defensive shields, no subspace disruptors. The command crew, each at their crystalline stations, exchanged looks of bewilderment. The reports had indicated that humanity was a species of interest, one that had achieved faster than light travel within the past decade. Yet here they were, seemingly defenseless before the might of the Meridian Empire's Third Fleet. Perhaps our intelligence was flawed, Verthak mused, his sensor stalks swaying in thought. Initiate deep scans of the population centers. They must have some means of planetary defense. The scans revealed cities teeming with life, transportation networks flowing with vehicles, and vast gatherings of humans in multiple locations. But instead of military preparations or signs of panic at the arrival of an alien fleet, the humans appeared to be celebrating. Admiral, Kelman called out, her voice carrying a note of confusion. We're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's being broadcast on all frequencies, formatted to be compatible with our communication systems. Verthak's sensory stalks all turned toward the main display. They've studied our technology. At least they show some sophistication. Display the message. The crystal walls of the command chamber shimmed as they projected the transmission. It wasn't a surrender declaration or a diplomatic warning as expected. Instead, it was an invitation. To the distinguished visitors in orbit, humanity welcomes you to join us for Earth's first interstellar music festival, beginning in 12 hours across all major continents. We offer this celebration of art and culture as our first gesture of friendship between our civilizations. Silence fell across the command chamber. Verthak's sensory stalks trembled slightly, a sign of both amusement and irritation to those who knew Meridian body language. They faced the most powerful fleet in the quadrant, he said finally, and they respond with an invitation to a musical performance. There's more, Admiral, Kellerman interjected. The transmission includes mathematical patterns that appear to be musical notations, along with historical context about human musical development. They're suggesting we study this material to prepare ourselves for the experience. Verthak moved to the center of the command chamber, where the crystal floor thrummed with the ship's power. In his centuries of service, he had overseen first contact with 17 species. All had either attempted to fight or immediately surrendered. None had invited their potential conquerors to a concert. This must be a deception, he declared. And yet, one of his sensory stalks brushed against a crystal panel, causing it to resonate with a pure, clear note. The Meridians, with their crystalline technology, had always been sensitive to vibration and sound. It was why their ships were designed to channel and dampen sonic energy. Prepare a security detail, he decided. We will accept this invitation. If nothing else, it will give us an opportunity to assess their true capabilities. And if it is genuine, he let the thought hang unfinished in the resonant chamber. Sir, Kelman questioned. Then we will have witnessed something unprecedented in the history of first contact. Verthak turned all 6 sensory stalks toward Earth. Send the response. Tell them the Meridian Empire accepts their invitation. In the depths of the crystal ship, something imperceptible began to change. The first notes of humanity's greatest composition had already begun to play. The security detail materialized at the Tokyo Music Dome coordinates in a shower of crystalline light. Admiral Verthak's sensory stalks immediately registered the overwhelming presence of hundreds of thousands of humans, their collective energy pulsing through the evening air. Rather than the expected military escort, they were greeted by a small group wearing what appeared to be ceremonial robes, later identified as orchestra conductors. "Welcome to Earth," the lead conductor said, bowing deeply. "We've reserved a special section where your crystalline biology can best experience the performance." Verthak noticed his security team's defensive formations wavering as the ambient sounds of the gathering crowd washed over them. The Meridian's crystalline implants hummed in response to the chaotic blend of voices, movements, and preliminary instrument tuning. "These vibrations," first observer Kellerman whispered, her cerebral crest flickering with unusual patterns. "They're unstructured, yet somehow harmonious." The Meridians were led to an enclosed crystalline chamber, specially constructed using specifications from their own transmitted data. The humans had somehow designed it to act as an acoustic resonance chamber, optimized for Meridian sensory physiology. "The festival begins simultaneously in 12 locations," their guide explained. "Each venue represents a different musical tradition from Earth's history. You're about to experience what we call a symphony orchestra." Verthak was about to respond when the lights dimmed. In the darkness, his sensory stalks detected something unprecedented. The collective anticipation of thousands of humans, all focused on an empty stage. The first note struck like a quantum pulse through their crystalline chamber. The Admiral's sensory stalks went rigid as the sound waves interfaced perfectly with their resonance chamber. This wasn't the primitive noise they had expected. This was mathematics made manifest, physics transformed into pure emotion. The orchestra moved as one entity, producing waves of sound that the Meridian's crystalline biology processed on levels they had never experienced. Their implants, designed to filter and control sensory input, instead amplified the experience, transmitting deep harmonics through their neural networks. "Admiral." Kelman's voice wavered. "The humans, they're not just creating sound. They're engineering emotional resonance using acoustic waves. Our defensive protocols, they're not designed for this type of input." She was right. The Meridians had developed their crystalline technology to be responsive to precise, controlled frequencies. But this was controlled chaos, structured entropy, impossible mathematics expressed through air vibrations. Through his command link, Verthak received simultaneous reports from the other 11 venues. Each location featured entirely different instruments, traditions, and musical forms: jazz in New Orleans, classical Chinese orchestra in Beijing, African drums in Lagos. Each performance targeted different resonance frequencies, different emotional harmonics. "It's a test," he realized suddenly. "They're mapping our responses to different forms of music, learning which frequencies affect us most strongly." But even as he formed this tactical assessment, Verthak found his own crystalline implants synchronizing with the symphony's crescendo. The music bypassed their logical centers, speaking directly to something deeper, something the Meridians had forgotten in their pursuit of crystalline perfection. In orbit, the fleet's sensors registered an unexpected phenomenon. The crystalline hulls of their ships had begun to vibrate in harmony with the performances below, creating a cascading resonance effect throughout the fleet. "Should we withdraw?" Kelman managed to ask as the music swelled to impossible heights. Verthak's sensory stalks swayed with the melody. "No," he replied, understanding flowing through him with each new measure. "This isn't an attack. It's an awakening." As the first piece ended, the Admiral realized humanity's true strategy. They hadn't prepared for this first contact with weapons or shields or defensive technologies. They had prepared with something far more sophisticated: an understanding of how to touch a soul made of crystal. Station Commander Lynn Era stood in her personal quarters aboard the support vessel Crystal Resonance, her sensory stalks trembling as she reviewed the sensor logs for the third time. The crystalline walls around her hummed with a melody she couldn't silence, one that had embedded itself into the ship's very structure during the Earth concert 2 days ago. She played back the recording again, focusing on the moment when the human violinist had reached that impossible note, the one that had made her cerebral crest shine with colors she didn't know it could produce. The ship's crystal responded instantly, resonating with the memory. "Computer, analyze harmonic pattern Delta 7 again," she commanded, her voice barely steady. "Compared to standard meridian communication frequencies." The results confirmed her fears. The human music wasn't just affecting their ship's crystalline structures, it was altering them. Each replay of a musical piece caused the crystals to grow in new patterns, creating acoustic chambers that automatically amplified and reproduced the songs. Her private research chamber had become a repository of Earth's music over the past 48 hours. Classical pieces floated through one corner, jazz rhythms pulsed from another, and traditional folk songs wove between them. The crystal walls had begun growing new formations to better channel each distinct style. "Commander," her second's voice chimed through the communication crystal. "Engineering reports unusual growth patterns in the primary resonance core." "What kind of patterns?" Lynn Era asked, though she already knew the answer. "They appear to be conducting themselves, sir. The crystal structures are organizing into something resembling a terrestrial orchestra configuration." Lynn Era touched one of her sensory stalks to the nearest wall, feeling the vibrations. The entire ship had become an instrument, and it was learning to play itself. She should report this to Admiral Verthak immediately. This was clearly a security breach of the highest order. Instead, she found herself asking, how many other ships are showing similar patterns? "All of them, Commander. But there's more. The new growth patterns, they're not just replicating the human music. They're creating variations. The crystals are composing." Linnera closed her inner eyelids, letting the vibrations flow through her crystalline biology. She had been engineered from birth to serve as a perfect military commander, her implants optimized for tactical analysis and strategic planning. But now those same implants were teaching her something that centuries of Meridian civilization had forgotten: how to create. She opened a secure channel to the engineering section. "This information stays contained for now," she ordered. "But I want every detail of these new crystal formations documented. And..." She hesitated for a moment, then continued, "Send me the compositions they're creating." Over the next several hours, Lynn Era immersed herself in the impossible music birthed from the union of human artistry and Meridian technology. The crystal ships, designed as perfect war machines, were becoming instruments of creation. Each new pattern that emerged carried echoes of Earth's songs, but twisted into forms that spoke to the deepest parts of Meridian consciousness. "Computer," she said finally, her decision made. "Begin recording." Personal log, encrypted. The humans didn't deploy a weapon against us. They gave us a gift we didn't know we needed. Our crystal technology, which we perfected for war, had a higher purpose we never imagined. We thought we were complete, but we were only half of an equation waiting to be balanced. The humans didn't attack our weaknesses. They awakened our strengths. She paused as a new melody emerged from the walls, a haunting blend of human orchestration and crystalline harmonics that made her cerebral crest pulse with joy. "And I believe," she added softly, "that this is only the beginning." The emergency council meeting aboard the flagship cast prismatic shadows across the crystal-lined war room. 5 ship commanders stood with their sensory stalks rigidly formal, while Admiral Verthak observed the latest reports with growing concern. 3 more vessels have developed what engineering calls acoustic chambers. Commander Sentol reported, his cerebral crest dimmed to show proper military decorum. "The crystal growths are spreading through the secondary systems, reorganizing our communication arrays into instruments." "And the crews?" Verthak asked, though the subtle harmonics echoing through the flagship's halls had already given him his answer. "They're encouraging it, Admiral." Sentol's sensory stalks drooped slightly. "We've recorded 743 instances of unauthorized musical gatherings in the past solar day alone. The crew of the Light Seeker has even begun modifying their duty stations to better capture what they call acoustic resonance." Through the crystal walls came a faint melody, one of the human pieces from the concert, but altered, twisted into something uniquely Meridian. The war room's crystals hummed in response, growing almost imperceptibly toward the sound. "We could order a fleet-wide system purge," suggested Commander Vaxmill. "Reset all crystal matrices to their original military configurations." But even as he spoke, his own cerebral crest flickered in harmony with the distant music. "Impossible," interjected Chief Engineer Tellerin, her sensory stalks waving in agitation. "The changes aren't just physical. The crystal matrices have developed new growth patterns at the quantum level. They're not just reproducing the music anymore. They're learning from it, evolving. Every attempt to reset them results in the new patterns re-emerging, often more complex than before." Verthak moved to the center of the war room, where a holographic display showed the status of each ship in the fleet. The traditional geometric patterns of their crystal structures were transforming, developing curves and spirals that mimicked the flow of human melodies. "Show me the efficiency ratings," he commanded. The statistics that appeared shocked the council into silence. Power distribution was up 30%. Crystal resonance had improved by factors of hundreds. Ships that had embraced the new growth patterns were operating at levels of synchronization never before achieved in Meridian history. "What we're seeing," Tellerin explained, her voice carrying an unprecedented note of wonder, "is adaptation at its most fundamental level. The human music isn't damaging our technology, it's completing it. These patterns, these harmonies, they're expressions of mathematical principles our civilization glimpsed but never fully grasped." A young lieutenant entered the war room, then stopped short at the sight of the assembled command staff. "My apologies, Admiral, but you need to see this." The holographic display shifted to show the engine room of the Lightseeker. Its crystal core, once a perfect geometric structure of military precision, had reorganized itself into an impossibly beautiful spiral of crystalline frequencies. As they watched, it pulsed with light and energy, each vibration carrying notes of a new song, one that blended human composition with Meridian harmonics. "The cores are singing," the lieutenant whispered. Verthak felt the vibrations through his sensory stalks, recognized the mathematical perfection in every note. In all his centuries of service, he had never encountered anything like this, a force that improved rather than destroyed, that created rather than conquered. "Send word to the fleet," he ordered finally. "All attempts to reverse the crystal transformations are hereby suspended. Instead, I want full documentation of every change, every new pattern, every—" He paused, using a word that had never before been spoken in a Meridian war room. "Every song." The crystals around them chimed in approval, adding their own notes to humanity's greatest composition, one that was rewriting the very nature of their civilization, one frequency at a time. Lynn Era stood before the human delegation in the flagship's newly formed Grand Resonance Chamber, her sensory stalks trembling with barely contained excitement. The once austere military chamber had transformed over the past week, its crystal walls now flowing in elegant curves that caught and amplified every sound. "We never imagined this level of synthesis," the human physicist, Dr. Sarah Chen, observed, running her hand along a crystal formation that hummed at her touch. "Your technology isn't just responding to our music, it's evolving to understand it. Understanding is barely the beginning." Lynn Era replied, gesturing to the chamber center. "Watch." She touched her sensory stalks to a crystal interface, and the chamber came alive. The walls began to pulse with light and sound, recreating a perfect blend of Mozart's Symphony No. 40 and traditional Meridian harmonics. But this wasn't a simple replay. The crystal structures were interpreting the music, adding new layers of complexity that bridged the gap between human and Meridian sensibilities. "Remarkable," breathed Dr. Chen. "The crystalline matrices are actually learning musical theory. They're composing." The human music teacher beside her, Professor James Martinez, stepped forward with wide eyes. "Those harmonics, they're following Earth's classical rules of composition, but they're adding mathematical patterns we've never conceived of. It's like the crystals have discovered a whole new musical language. Lin-Era's cerebral crest glowed with pride. We've had to create new terms to describe what's happening. The crystal formations aren't just growing anymore. They're harmonizing. Each ship in the fleet has developed its own unique acoustic signature, but they all work together in what we're calling the Crystal Symphony. She led the delegation to a viewing platform that had sprouted from the chamber walls. Below them, hundreds of Meridian crew members gathered in what had once been a tactical planning space. Some held traditional human instruments, while others touched crystal formations that had grown specifically to be played. This is the real breakthrough, Lin-Era explained as music began to fill the space. We're learning to create music ourselves, not just through the crystal technology, but with our own bodies and minds. The crystals showed us how, but the music comes from within us now. The performance below demonstrated her point. Meridian musicians, their sensory stalks moving in perfect rhythm, played alongside crystal formations that responded to their touch. The music they created was unlike anything either species had heard before, a perfect fusion of organic and crystalline sound. We thought we had perfected our crystal technology, Lin-Era continued, her voice soft with wonder. We used it for weapons, for ships, for computational matrices. But we never realized its true potential until we heard your music. The crystals weren't just tools, they were instruments waiting to be played. Dr. Chen's scientific curiosity was evident as she took readings on her tablet. The harmonic resonance patterns are off the charts. You're not just making music, you're reaching frequencies that could revolutionize everything from communications to energy distribution. Professor Martinez wasn't looking at the readings. His attention was fixed on a young Meridian crew member who had just coaxed a hauntingly beautiful melody from a crystal formation. That's not what matters, he said quietly. Look at their faces. They're discovering the joy of creation, maybe for the first time in their history. Lin-Era's sensory stalks swayed in agreement. In the week since Admiral Verthak had embraced the changes, she had watched her people transform. The rigid military discipline remained, but it was now infused with something new. Creativity, expression, emotion. The crystal symphony swelled around them, each note a bridge between two species that had found harmony in the most unexpected way. And somewhere in the music, Lin-Era heard the echo of a greater truth. Sometimes the most powerful changes come not through force, but through beauty. The message from the Meridian High Council arrived during the third movement of the Crystal Symphony's debut performance. Admiral Verthak felt it buzz through his command implants, a harsh interruption to the transcendent harmonies flowing through the flagship's transformed halls. We have received disturbing reports, the Council Elder's hologram declared, her sensory stalks rigid with disapproval. Our mighty fleet, pride of the Meridian Empire, has been compromised by primitive sound waves. This is unacceptable. Verthak watched as the crystal walls around him pulsed with the ongoing performance, each note adding new patterns to their ever-evolving structure. In the chamber below, human and Meridian musicians played together, creating harmonies that made his cerebral crest shimmer with colors he had never known it could produce. "Honorable Elder," he replied, choosing his words carefully. "I invite you to observe what we have discovered." He transmitted the live feed of the performance, along with the technical data showing the unprecedented improvements in their ship's efficiency. "These are warships, Admiral," the Elder snapped, though Verthak noticed her sensory stalks twitch in response to the music. "They are not meant to be concert halls. You will cease this aberration immediately and return the fleet to its proper military configuration." Through his neural link, Verthak sensed the music spreading through every crystal vessel in the fleet. Each ship had developed its own unique voice, yet all played in perfect harmony. The mighty dreadnoughts that once carried planet-destroying weapons now resonated with creation instead of destruction. "With respect, Honorable Elder," he said, "I cannot comply with that order." "Cannot. Or will not. Both." Verthak extended his sensory stalks to their full length, a gesture of absolute conviction. What we have discovered here goes beyond military protocol. The humans haven't weakened our ships, they've awakened them. And in doing so, they've awakened us. The Elder's hologram flickered as she received the latest performance data. Her outer eyelids blinked rapidly as she processed the information. These energy readings, they're impossible. The crystal matrices are operating at efficiencies we believe to be theoretical. Because we never understood their true nature, Verthak explained. We shaped our crystals into weapons, but they were always meant to be instruments. Every ship in this fleet is now more powerful than ever before, not as a weapon, but as a testament to what our species can achieve when we create instead of destroy. The music reached a crescendo, and Verthak watched in satisfaction as the Elder's cerebral crest began to pulse in sync with the harmonies. The crystal symphony was working its changes even across the vast distance of space. The Council will not be pleased, she said, but her voice had lost its edge of command. Then let them come and witness this for themselves, Verthak suggested. Let them stand in these halls and feel what happens when two species choose harmony over conflict. Our fleet's mission was to assess humanity's potential as a threat. We have assessed them and found something far more valuable than another conquest. We have found teachers. The Elder was silent for a long moment, her sensory stalks swaying almost imperceptibly to the music. Finally, she said, the Council will arrive in 3 solar days. We will evaluate this situation personally. As her hologram faded, Verthak turned his attention back to the performance. Commander Linera had taken center stage, her sensory stalks dancing, as she conducted both crystal formations and living musicians in a piece that celebrated the merging of 2 worlds. Send word to Earth, he commanded his communications officer. Request their finest musicians and composers. When the Council arrives, we will show them not just what we have learned, but what we can become. The crystal walls hummed in approval, adding their own notes to humanity's ongoing lesson in the power of creation over destruction. The Council's arrival was heralded not by the traditional military fanfare, but by an unexpected harmony that rippled through their ships the moment they entered Earth's orbit. Their crystalline vessels, untouched by human music until now, began to resonate with the songs emanating from the transformed fleet. What is happening? Demanded Council Prime Vental, her sensory stalks writhing as the crystal walls of her flagship pulsed with new frequencies. Our ships, they're responding without authorization. The combined human meridian orchestra assembled in the Grand Resonance Chamber fell silent as the Council members materialized. 7 of the most powerful beings in the Empire, their ceremonial armor glinting with embedded crystals, stood in rigid formation. But their cerebral crests were already beginning to flicker in response to the lingering harmonies in the air. Honorable Council, Admiral Verthak began. Welcome to what we now call the Symphony Fleet. Before any Council member could respond, Commander Linera stepped forward, her sensory stalks arranged in the pattern of formal address. With your permission, we have prepared a demonstration. Council Prime Vental's initial protest died in her throat as the first notes began to play. Human violins sang in perfect harmony with crystalline formations that had grown specifically for this performance. The music spiraled through the chamber, each note carrying mathematical patterns that made the Council members' implants hum with recognition. Impossible, whispered Council Minister Senra, the Empire's leading crystal engineer. The harmonic resonance patterns, they're achieving perfect quantum synchronization. We've tried to achieve this for centuries. The music built in complexity, demonstrating the evolution of the fleet's transformation. Traditional Earth instruments blended with meridian crystal harmonics, creating something entirely new. The chamber itself seemed to dance with light and sound, its structures growing and shifting in real time to enhance every frequency. This is more than music, Professor Martinez explained to the Council, stepping forward with quiet confidence. Your crystalline technology has been waiting for this catalyst. Every ship in your fleet is now part of a single vast instrument, one that operates with unprecedented efficiency and power. Council Prime Vental's outer eyelids narrowed. power that could be turned against us. This could be an elaborate human weapon. If we wanted to use this as a weapon, Lynn Era countered, we already could have. Instead, we've used it to create something greater than either of our species could achieve alone. She gestured, and the crystal walls projected a cascade of technical data, power efficiency readings, quantum coherence measurements, and harmonic resonance patterns filled the air around them. Every metric showed improvements that should have been theoretically impossible. Your ships aren't just warships anymore, Dr. Chen added. They're the most sophisticated instruments ever created. The music they're capable of producing could revolutionize everything from space travel to healing. The council members' cerebral crests began to pulse in synchronized patterns as the evidence mounted. Even their ceremonial armor crystals had begun to sing, adding their own delicate notes to the symphony around them. Council Minister Senra turned to her fellow council members, her sensory stalks arranged in the pattern of profound discovery. The humans have given us what we never knew we were missing. Our crystal technology wasn't incomplete. It was waiting for this harmony. And this is just the beginning, Verthak said softly. Every day, we discover new possibilities. The crystal formations aren't just growing anymore. They're evolving, learning, creating. They've become a bridge between our species. The music swelled to a crescendo, and in that moment, even Council Prime Vental's rigid posture softened. The combined voices of human inspiration and Meridian technologies sang of something greater than conquest or power. They sang of transformation. 1 solar year after the first notes of human music touched Meridian crystal technology, the transformed fleet gathered for a celebration unlike any in the history of either species. The ships, their once rigid geometric forms, now flowing with organic curves and musical patterns, arranged themselves in a vast orbital formation above Earth. Commander Lynn Era stood at the center of the Grand Symphony Chamber aboard the flagship, her sensory stalks swaying gently as she surveyed the assembled audience. Humans and Meridians sat together in sections designed to optimize acoustic reception for both species. The chamber itself had evolved beyond its original design, becoming a living instrument that responded to the emotions and harmonies flowing through it. When we first arrived in Earth's orbit, she began, her voice carrying through crystalline acoustics. We expected to find a primitive species in need of conquest or protection. Instead, we found teachers who showed us that the most powerful technology isn't the one that destroys, it's the one that creates. The crystal walls pulsed with soft light as Professor Martinez stepped forward to join her. And we humans, he added, found partners who helped us understand that music isn't just an art form. It's a fundamental force of the universe, capable of transforming both technology and consciousness. At their signal, the first movement of the orbital symphony began. Each ship in the fleet contributed its unique voice to the performance, their crystalline structures resonating in perfect harmony. The music they created was visible from Earth's surface as waves of chromatic energy that danced between the vessels, turning the entire fleet into a spectacular concert hall among the stars. Council Prime Vental, her former rigid demeanor softened by a year of musical evolution, activated the quantum broadcast network. The performance would be transmitted across the Meridian Empire, carrying with it the changes that had already begun to reshape their civilization. Our ships once carried weapons of unimaginable power, she announced to the assembled dignitaries. Now they carry something far more potent, the power to bridge the gap between species, between art and science, between creation and consciousness. The symphony rose in complexity as human instruments joined the crystal harmonies. Violin strings sang alongside crystalline resonances, earth drums kept time with pulsing quantum harmonics, and human voices blended with meridian tonal emissions in ways that defied traditional music theory. Dr. Chen's research team had documented thousands of new crystal growth patterns over the past year, each one more sophisticated than the last. The crystalline structures aren't just responding to music anymore, she explained, gesturing to the latest data streams. They're anticipating it, contributing to it, evolving with it. Every performance creates new possibilities we hadn't imagined. As the symphony reached its crescendo, the fleet's formation shifted, the ships moving in patterns that embodied the music they created. From Earth's surface, millions watched as their new allies painted the night sky with light and sound, turning space itself into an artist's canvas. Admiral Verthak, his ceremonial armor now grown with musical crystal formations, touched his sensory stalks to the chamber's walls. "We came here seeking to understand humanity's potential," he reflected. "We never expected that potential to unlock our own." The final movement of the symphony brought together every element they had discovered over the past year: human creativity, meridian technology, and the unexpected harmony they had found together. The music spoke of transformation, of discovery, and of the endless possibilities that lay ahead. As the last notes faded into space, Lynera's cerebral crest glowed with colors that 1 year ago she hadn't known existed. "And this," she said softly, "is still just the overture." The crystal walls hummed in agreement, adding their own gentle harmonics to the moment. In the space between worlds, between species, between art and science, a new symphony was just beginning to play.